So I've been using your Vision Pro a lot this week.
Are you asking genuinely, or I feel like I'm walking into something and I don't know what. I'm a little scared. No, I've been using it a medium amount.
I feel a little bad because I haven't really been using the Vision Pro, and I feel like I'm being a bad Apple fan and a bad developer and a bad podcaster by not really using it much. But
you think we haven't talked enough about Vision Pro? Is that what you're worried about?
Yeah, maybe that's I don't know, because like so finally, like I've been in this, we're doing our house renovations. It's taking forever. So we've been in this rental. I don't want to like buy my new desk and set it up here only to move it in a few weeks or whenever we actually finally get out of here.
Any day now,
right?
Like, can I interrupt you? You right there? So I'm guessing the end of the story is not only have you bought a desk, but you have somehow ended up with a bespoke monitor just for this purpose.
Not entirely wrong, but not right.
Oh, here we go. All right, settle in, everyone. Let's hear it.
So I had all these hopes of like, okay, when the Vision Pro comes out, I'll use the Mac mirroring mode. And because like I had, the rental has this like, crappy basic, one of those particle board staples, $50 desks. It's fine for most people, but it's too high. Like desks, for me, one of the reasons I get standing desks is because they're also adjustable height desks easily. Most desks are too high for comfortable computer use for me. And I would argue correct ergonomics for almost anybody, but that's a separate discussion. So anyway, I'm at this like particle board rectangle, and it's too high, and my wrists are all hurting, and I'm not able to use my good keyboard. I don't have space to like lay everything out on this tiny little thing. And I'm like, should I just order my new desk early but it's going to be heavy. I don't want to like move it, just in a few weeks.
Yeah, but Marco, the desk is too damn high.
I know. And then secondly, the monitor situation, like, not having my giant monitor, and I was going to try the Vision Pro thing and just work on that for like a month. And again, it's kind of just not compatible with my eyes much. I realized, like, wait a minute. Somewhere in our garage full of stuff that we moved out of the old house that's still all in boxes and moving blankets, somewhere in there's an old IKEA desk frame. And somewhere else in there's a big plank of wood that Tiff was using as like a fake desktop on top of some other stuff. I'm like, if I can find those two things, I can have a lightweight, easily moved desk that will be the right size and the right height. Like, so anyway, long story short, dug through the garage. It was an adventure, but I got it. And I also, a few months back, because we were about to move into our new house in the fall, I also ordered another Pro Display XDR, because that's the reason I mailed you the LG Ultrafine.
Which I'm very thankful for. I'm looking at it literally as we speak. It is plugged into my computer right this very moment.
Yeah. So the reason I mailed it to you is that I intended to, once we moved, to replace it with another XDR. And I was hoping they would update the XDR in the meantime. They haven't. And I was also hoping to have been moved in 5 months ago. That hasn't happened. So it's been sitting in the box, like waiting to be used. Again, same rationale. I'm like, do I want to like unpack this giant monitor from its giant box and set it up just to have to move it again in a few weeks? I'll just use the Vision Pro Mac screen sharing mode. That didn't pan out. The desk ergonomics sucked. A few days ago, I finally was like, you know what? I think we're going to be in this house for like 3 more weeks. I am just going to set this stuff up, even though it's only for 3 weeks. Like, I'm just going to set up the stupid desk and set up the stupid giant monitor. Maybe I'll waste an afternoon and have to waste another afternoon taking them all down and moving them in 3 weeks. But maybe it'll be worth it. I am so happy I didn't.
This is not surprising at all.
It is 1,000% worth it. I wish I would have done it weeks ago or a couple months ago even. Oh my God. Working on a correct height desk with a giant monitor. I am so happy for the people out there for whom the Vision Pro Mac screen sharing mode is working well. That's wonderful for you. I'm so happy for you. It's not the case for me. And so now that I have like the real thing again, oh my God, what a difference. Night and day in terms of comfort, ergonomics, my productivity, my eyes working. Oh my God, it's fantastic. So long story short, I finally moved some furniture around and it was really worth it. It's a super exciting story.
To answer the question that you were originally asking, perhaps as an excuse to tell this story, which I don't begrudge you for. I have been using my Vision Pro I have certainly been using it less than I had in the first couple of weeks I had it. But I am actively working on the Vision Pro version of Call Sheet. And just in the last week, I don't remember if we brought this up last week or not, but in the last week, I've gotten to the point that I've gone from actively embarrassing to, well, this kind of sucks, but it's at least workable. And so for the select few that are on the test flight, and I am not looking for more at the moment, but thank you for asking, the select few that are on the test flight do have a Vision Pro version. My hope, not a guarantee, in fact, probably won't happen, but my hope is that I'll have it done before my birthday, which is in just a couple of weeks now. But I am actively working on it. And I tell you what, the easiest way, in my personal opinion, to do Vision Pro work is to do it using Mac Virtual Display in the Vision Pro environment, with the Vision Pro on your face and so on and so forth. I still like it. I maybe even like it plus. I certainly don't like it more than 3 physical 5K monitors that are staring me in the face right now, giving me a sunburn. But I do like it. And I don't find it burdensome or bothersome in the ways that you do. And as we've covered before, like that's not to imply that your feelings or story is wrong and mine is right, or vice versa. Just like you said a moment ago, for some people it does work and for you it doesn't. I'm one of those people it does work for. So anyways, I have been using it some. I've gotten sidetracked with other professional, nothing bad, but other professional responsibilities. So I haven't been doing as much work this week as I usually do. But I will say that last night, Erin had her monthly book club, which happens in the evening time. And so I had a couple of hours to kill, once the kids were in bed by myself. And I started by looking at my repertoire within, or my collection within Apple, the Apple TV app in terms of movies that I've bought, which really amounts to, movies that I connected with, Movies Everywhere, Movies Anywhere, whatever it's called. And of which there are not many, to be honest with you, but Heat is one of them. And so I watched the scene from Heat. Marco, you have not seen Heat, I assume?
I think I might have.
Oh, it's a miracle. It's a great movie. But anyways, I watched the bank heist scene from Heat, which was amazing. And then I didn't want to watch the whole movie because I'd seen it relatively recently. So I've been having an itch recently to rewatch Tron Legacy, or whatever the sequel is called. I forget what it was called, but it was like 10 years ago now. And I watched the first half an hour of that. It is not 3D or anything like that. It's just a regular 2D movie, but
there is a 3D version of it.
Okay, well, the version I have is not 3D. I think I was watching it from Disney Plus, I thought. Maybe I was looking at the wrong one, or maybe
they might not offer a 3D version of it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's a 3D version.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever ended up happening, be that user error, which it very well could have been. But the one I was watching was not 3D, but it was pretty delightful. This is not the sort of thing I would do if Erin was with me. I mean, she would be happy to watch the movies I watched, but I would not be sitting there with the goggles on my face watching a movie while she's next to me. But when I'm by myself, it's pretty great, and I did enjoy it quite a lot.
Before I forgot, we got a great feedback email from Sam's dad, who has a pretty good theory about maybe why it's not working out so well for me with the Mac stuff in the Vision Pro as other people. Sam's dad says, like a few of us, Marco was blessed with perfect vision until his 40s. Because he didn't have to rely on glasses, he's probably more accustomed to moving his eyes than someone like Casey or John, who have been burdened with glasses their entire lives. Because I think it is more natural for native eyeglass wearers to change their field of view by moving their head instead of their eyes. I believe the foveated rendering is less evident to them than someone like Marco.
I can test this. Why would I not move my eyes? It's not like I don't have glasses where I can't look through the edges. I can look, I'll do it right now. I'm looking straight ahead. My head is not moving. I can look at the Apple menu through my glasses, and the Apple menu is not warped or bent or broken or blurry or anything like that. It's perfectly crisp and clear. Maybe it's because I don't have progressives. Maybe it's because my prescription isn't that bad, but I don't. The part where this logic falls apart is the idea that because you wear glasses, you're more likely to turn your head. I think multi-monitor people are more likely to turn their head because they have to turn their head. Otherwise, they can't see the stuff that's on the far left of their far left monitor. But I'm a single monitor person, so.
Yeah. Anyway, so I thought it was an interesting theory, but maybe John is more right than not. As like this, we're still in such early days. We keep seeing some, various doom and gloom things about Vision Pro, like, oh, it's, people are returning or whatever. We had a little bit of that last week, and a couple more stories trickling out here and there. I personally, honestly, I have seen a somewhat frightening decline in the number of people using Overcast on Vision Pro over the last 2 weeks.
Using the iPad version of Vision Pro, to be clear.
Yes, using the iPad version of an audio-only podcast player in a virtual reality headset. So obviously, this is not the ideal test case. But I've seen, basically the week after launch is about twice as many users as I currently have this week.
Now, really quickly, is that basically how many people, and check-in is not the right turn of phrase, but how many people like checked in and opened the app each day? Is that how you're computing this?
Yeah, and no matter how I smooth it out, like if I do like a weekly rolling average, it's the same pattern. It's I've lost half the users already, but we are still in such early days of Vision Pro. Everyone's still figuring out what it is and what they want to do with it and what it's for, and it's going to take probably a couple of years to really start finding its legs and finding like the really great things and having those great things mature into actual developed app markets and content markets. If we all buy Vision Pros and then half of us decide, this is not doing what I wanted it to do, or it turns out this thing I wanted to do and this doesn't work very well, or whatever, that's not like a failure of the product. That just means our expectations were a little off, and now we have to figure out what is it good for, if anything. And I think, every other like major new tech product category, they've all gone through similar arcs. There have been very few exceptions that were just instant hits and instant like perfect market and usefulness fits right at the door. We've had a few complaints. I've seen a few complaints from people who are like, why, I'm so down on the Vision Pro, why am I such a, evil person insulting the work of all these hard engineers or whatever. And I don't really see it that way. I think this is a product that has a lot of potential, most of which is unrealized so far, not because it's a flop or a failure, but because it's brand new. We try, I've said this many times, like we always, whenever a new category is coming out, we always project our needs from the current things we know onto that. So, the watch will replace the smartphone or whatever. I'll get all my work done on my iPad. I won't have to buy a laptop ever again, like that kind of thing. And what we see over and over again is that might be true for some people, but not for most. And then we figure out what it is good for, and it finds its market. We're in the very early stages of this. It's way too soon to declare anything great or terrible for any particular use, and it's just going to take time to sort it all out.
I feel as though, and maybe I am over-indexing on my own personal experience, but I feel as though I didn't hear a lot about revolutionary is a bit dramatic, but like revolutionary apps that were available at launch day. I haven't had the chance to try Blackbox, for example, but I've understood Blackbox is one of those apps. And certainly it was amazing on iOS, and I loved it. I haven't had a chance to try it on the Vision Pro yet, but I've heard it's very, very good. But there wasn't too much. Like Crouton is another one that I've heard is that's a recipe app that does some really cool and great stuff with like timers and placing a timer like over the pot you're cooking. You saw this in Joanna Stern's video.
Don't forget the television app by Sandwich. That's really cool.
Well, so that's exactly where I was going with this, is that television, I don't think was available at launch, although honestly, we're a month later or whatever, so it's not even a month later, so it was available shortly thereafter. And television is definitely very, very cool, and my understanding is that YouTube support for it is coming out soon. So I'm sorry, I should back up. Television allows you to put one of what feels like an infinite number of TVs, like set-top TVs that you would see in the house, like when you or me or John was growing up. You can just stick that in your space and have it on as like an ambient background noise, which John has talked quite a bit about how much he hates that, but I don't mind it. And so you can stick a TV somewhere, put your own, video file in it, or presumably YouTube soon, and just have that play in the background. And it's spatial audio, so you hear it off in the corner of your room if that's where you put it, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have
to be in the background. I don't think that's part of the app. You could just put it right in front of you and watch it. That
is true. That is very true.
It's strange that you've decided this is the app to put on a television in the background.
Well, that's fair. But in any case, another great example of this, I don't remember the name of the app offhand, but I just tried earlier today some app by ForeFlight that lets you see, it puts like a disc with a mildly 3D version of the landscape around an airport, and will show you real-time flights coming in and out of that airport. It's one of those things that's kind of silly, and it doesn't really need the Vision Pro, but damn if it isn't cool, the Vision Pro, you know what I mean? And it's stuff like that.
You should be able to trace the paths for the planes to land with your finger.
Yeah, right? Oh, man, I loved flight control so much. That was my favorite. That, to this day, might be my favorite iPhone game.
That would have been actually a good Vision Pro launch app if the people who currently own that IP did like flight control, and it was basically just flight control, but in 3D. Really hard to do with the hand tracking that Apple offers now, though, I imagine.
Yeah, right. Very true. But anyways, my point that I'm getting at slowly here is that I feel like we're starting to see a bunch of much more interesting apps come out. And like, take Call Sheet for an example. I'd like to think it's going to be pretty good on Vision Pro, but there's nothing especially unique about the Vision Pro build. What I'm really doing is making the iPad build fit in the platform and follow the platform conventions and things like that. There's nothing that's unique about it for the Vision Pro in terms of like, having it be particularly spatial or anything like that. It's just a very fancy iPad app. And I feel like things like television, like this ForeFlight app whose name escapes me, I think and Crouton and Blackbox, I think those apps are better examples of thinking outside the box with visionOS. And I suspect over time, and I think this is basically what you're saying, Marco, over time, we're going to see more and more of that as we discover what is this device really good for? And to quickly answer the question that you've kind of implied, or you sort of asked before, like, I mean, obviously I didn't return mine, but I don't know that I would have spent the money on one originally if it wasn't for, the professional obligation that I feel like I have. But I do like having it. Like if you consider that obscene amount of money a wash at this point, I really like having it. And I am probably going to be taking some plane travel next month. And assuming I have the gumption to be that guy, you bet I'm going to be watching a movie on the plane or doing work or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it is an extremely cool device. And if any of us seem down on it, and I think I speak for Marco in saying this, if we're down on it, we sound like we're down on it. I don't think we mean to at all. It's extremely cool and extremely fun. It's just everyone, including the three of us / two of us, are trying to figure out where it fits in our lives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be very much like, to bring it back to our roots here, like starting a car in fifth gear. Like you can do it. It's going to be a slow start.
Yeah.
It's a little bit challenging, but it is possible to do. And eventually you can get to a pretty great place. And I think this is just going to have a very slow build up. We don't know what to do with it. Apple doesn't know what to do with it, but we can tell it's really cool. Some people have found some things to do with it already, and we're going to just grow them from here. And it is largely a dev kit for developers right now. Again, I don't think there's much of an app market to speak of yet, but again, it's so early days. We're not going to know yet. No one's going to be able to declare this like, oh, this thing is great or this thing is terrible, because there's just so far unrealized potential that will just take a long time to develop. Like I'm talking on the order of probably years, not months. Like it's probably going to be a couple of years before there's really like a decent amount of stuff on Vision Pro, a decent amount of reasons to buy one for most people, and certainly it's going to take longer than that for the prices to come down and for the capabilities to get better. So it's going to be a slow process, but I think it is going to move forward. It's just going to, it might take a while for us to really see that.
Yep, agreed.
But we're not talking about Vision Pro this week.
Nope, no, we're not. Definitely not.
Well, while you were talking, I pulled this item, which I was going to say for next week's follow-up, but it is very relevant to what you just discussed. So, new top item.
New top item, breaking news. Vision Pro demand is higher than expected, returns down to 1%, reports 9to5Mac. Ming-Chi Kuo writes, the U.S. shipments are expected to be between 200 and 250,000 units this year, better than Apple's original estimate of 150 to 200,000. Apparently, according to 9to5Mac, Apple has asked suppliers to increase production, which Ming-Chi Kuo believes is due to a mix of relatively high U.S. demand and plans to roll out sales in other countries in the coming months.
I don't know what Ming-Chi Kuo would know about Apple's return rates, but I would expect him to know about that Apple has asked suppliers to increase production because that's his beat, Apple supply chain. And I feel like this is very counter to the very predictable story of like, people are returning them, no one wants them, sales are down. Or even Marco was saying, you could get one immediately. That means they're doing badly. But whatever Apple's estimates were, apparently they either did a conservative first order and now are asking for more, or they just really didn't think they would sell this many. So I think it's doing fine. I think it's doing as expected for year one sales of an expensive, weird thing.
Anonymous writes, I work as an applied cryptographer and have been researching this stuff for several years, including deploying it into production systems at my jobby job. One minor correction to how the PQ hybrid scheme was described. It's not that the data would be encrypted twice, once with classical crypto like ECDH and then twice with PQC. Rather, two separate shared secrets are established, one classical, one PQC, and then combined cryptographically to form a single session key that inherits the security properties of both crypto systems with a single encrypt operation. That's pretty neat. The reason for this is not entirely to hedge against potential bugs in the PQC implementation, but also to hedge against the selected PQC algorithm itself becoming broken by continued cryptanalysis. And that's not such a crazy notion. In 2022, one of the finalist algorithms for NIST's PQC selection process, the algorithm is called Psyche, S-I-K-E, which I love, was broken with a 10-year-old laptop. Whoopsie-dipsies. So keeping the classical crypto in the equation means that you at least fall back to the security of today, which is battle-hardened from millions of hours of research attempting unsuccessfully to break it.
I thought that was neat, because post-quantum cryptography is so new, it hasn't really been battle tested, so people have ideas. We think this will be, protected against quantum computers, and oops, it's not protected against a 10-year-old laptop. Well, let's try again, right? And so that's, I thought it was like, okay, bugs in Apple's implementation, what if they messed it up or whatever? But it could just be they implemented it perfectly, but the algorithm is so new that it doesn't perform as expected. And that happens with all, cryptography things, like all the weaknesses that were found in things that were once considered state of the art, like, the original RSA, MD5, all these things that are much less strong now than we thought they were back in the day. And that could happen with Apple's selection of their post-quantum cryptography thing. So underneath it all is the cryptography they've been using up till now, which has, thus far stood the test of time.
Continuing, another peculiarity I wanted to call out was the choice of security levels in Apple's hybrid construction. They're using the PQC algorithm Kyber 1024, which is roughly equivalent to the security level of an AES 256, or in NIST's parlance, a level 5. But they're combining it with the elliptic curve algorithm P256, which is roughly equivalent to AES 128, or level 1 in NIST's parlance, NIST. The level terminology is confusing because Apple seems to have invented their own leveling system that is unrelated to the levels I mentioned here. But what that tells me is that they are really skeptical of Kyber, so they are going with the highest security level possible while keeping the lower classical crypto level. Presumably, this is so that they continue doing their comparatively more efficient per-message rekeying on the classical portion of the hybrid construction.
Yeah, if there's doubts about the post-quantum thing and you have a choice of strength, just pick the strongest one and cross your fingers, and just keep doing the classical one in the in the way that's efficient and doesn't burn more resources and take more time. I think the Apple's post-quantum cryptography approach for messages is very sound and well considered. Doesn't mean that they're not going to have to take a second or third pass on it, but it's better to move now for the reasons we talked about last week, that there's no quantum computers out there now that are able to efficiently crack Apple's systems. But if someone's storing a bunch of iMessage data now by intercepting it, and they just have this pile of encrypted stuff that they think they can't read, you don't want them cracking that open 10, 20 years from now when they can read it. So the sooner Apple starts the big conversion of sort of silently in the background, kind of like they did with APFS, silently in the background, all your iMessage conversations will start converting to this, as long as everyone who's participating in them has at least iOS 17.4 or whatever the other equivalent versions of. Yeah, it's good to get this transition going.
John Mails writes, something I discovered recently, you can download your data from Apple in Google Takeout style, including Apple Notes, from privacy.apple.com. The notes are downloaded in a format that includes the data. Importing the data back into Notes would be tricky, I presume.
I don't know if I knew about this already or I forgot about it, but as soon as I saw this, I'm like, I've been looking for something to export notes. I think maybe last time I did it, that was using some app or script that exports them as PDF or just exports the text or whatever. But I took a look at it, and the privacy.apple.com thing is structured very much like Google Takeout, which is just sort of like a little form that you fill out. What do you want to export? How many files do you want it in? You can pick a maximum size, give it to me in files no bigger than 5 gigabytes or whatever you want. And just like Google Takeout, you finish filling out the form, and then it says, okay, we're working on your export. We'll send you an email when it's done. Unlike Google Takeout, this seems to take a long time. I requested my notes archive, just my notes archive, which is not that big. I have maybe 1,000 notes, not a lot of attachments in them, not a lot of images, 2 days ago, and they're still working on it. So Google Takeout does take some amount of time, but I don't think I've ever waited more than 24 hours for my Google Takeout of my gigs and gigs of Gmail. So I'll tell you how it goes. I did the Takeout thing because I wanted to see what format does it give it to me in. Any format is probably better than nothing. So I may add this to my sort of annual, like, paranoid data dump backup of online stuff, because at this point I have a lot of stuff in notes, and I would be sad if it all went away due to some weird bug.
Is this going to be a better alternative than just having some app like read the SQLite file in Mac OS and dump it for you?
We'll see. Like, I mean, part of what's in the notes is I have these nicely formatted documents with like photos and text coloring and like inline images and styled text, and, you know, like, they're nice documents. And so if I just had like, if I just dumped the text file from some blob in SQLite plus a bunch of attachment images, that's not the same thing. You know what I mean? But we'll see what format this is in. It could be equally useless. I'm hoping it is something that preserves some of the fidelity of the work I've put into some of the more complicated documents, like the one where I'm trying to pick out a new couch. It's like 7 years old and we still haven't bought a new couch. But there's a lot of pictures of couches in there, and URLs and informations and measurements and images and map locations for stores that have stuff. And yeah, I would want that to be preserved.
Wait, are you going to actually buy a new couch? That's major news.
I mean, signs say no, but for many years now, I've been trying to buy a new couch and failing. Most recently, we did a tour of like 5 local furniture stores to sit on candidate couches, and we still bought nothing. So I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, because, you know, remind the listeners, how many new couches have you bought in your entire life?
I've never bought a couch. Never. I'm using my grandparents' hand-me-down couches currently. They bought them. These are their new couches, so they bought them probably in the late 80s, early 90s.
Good grief.
They're both sleepers, and they weigh a ton.
Oh, yeah, you're never getting that out of your house.
I carried them into my house. I carried them from my grandmother's house in New Jersey into a U-Haul like rental truck, and then accidentally drove it on the Parkway. Sorry, everybody.
We've all been there.
Yeah. I just didn't think I'm in a truck now. It's so, you don't like, I know parkways aren't for trucks. What kind of idiot would take a truck on the Parkway? Everybody knows that. Oh, I didn't realize I'm a truck now.
Whoopsies. No, we've been also looking to get a couch, not particularly actively, in the same way it sounds like you are, and we have not done so in the last few years, and we need to. We don't have couches from the late 80s, but we are in the market as well, and I don't know, I haven't found the one that sticks for me.
Yeah, couches are tough. I should write something about how hard it is to find couches, but yeah, they're just...
And you have to go sit in them. Like, you have to find them in a store.
That's what I did. I did one on the sitting tour. I was like, this is it. I've candidate couches. They're all like roughly the right measurements. They have all the things I want about them. I'm going to sit on them. And you'd sit on them and you'd be like, what I've said to myself was, grandma's couch that is like torn to shreds and incredibly ugly is more comfortable than this. And it's sad to say that, but it was true. So I'm not going to pay all this money for a couch that is, I mean, it's going to be less ugly, but not as comfortable as the current one we have. It's rough.
Yeah, it is shocking how difficult it is to find a couch that fits you comfort-wise. Like, you have to just go to a big furniture store and sit in a whole bunch of them. And usually at the end of that, you'll have either 1 or 0 that you like.
Yep, can confirm. All right, moving right along. Adam Whirl writes that Marco is right.
Hey!
Calibration can prevent a magnetic watch band from throwing off the compass. I'm an aerospace engineer, and satellites can use magnetometers, I hope I pronounced that right, to figure out which way they're pointing, even with magnets and ferrous metals nearby. The key is that those disturbances are fixed with respect to the satellite or watch, while the Earth's magnetic field is locked to the Earth. Use GPS to look up the local magnetic field, take measurements while rotating the device, and solve for the calibration parameters. Normal watch behavior involves a lot of movement and rotation, so this could be entirely transparent to the user, or it could be a prompted swirling motion the iPhone Compass app sometimes asks for.
Yeah, this is the key bit we were missing. I was missing on the last one. It's like, oh, what about third-party watch bands? And they have magnets that Apple doesn't know the strength of. That doesn't matter because the Earth's magnetic field is always in the same place, right? So even if you put different strength magnets or whatever that Apple didn't anticipate, the key is whatever those things are, pick any strengths you want, they're going to be attached to the watch, but the Earth's magnetic field is not attached to the watch. So as the watch moves in your normal usage, or if you're asked to swirl it or whatever, the Earth's magnetic field will still always be pointing in the same direction.
Indeed. Zev Eisenberg writes, regarding magnets messing with the magnetometer, aka the compass and watches, the core motion framework can cancel it out. And it's not just about calibration of onboard magnets at the factory. All iOS devices with magnetometer, except the original iPad, also have a gyroscope. Core motion takes them both into account to cancel out magnets moving with the device. See, MagSafe car mounts don't break your compass. Guessing the watch already does the same with the same 2 sensors.
So not only can it do it, or in theory, there is even a framework to do it. So this seems, I mean, not that this makes it any more plausible that the straps are going to be attached with magnets, but we'll see. At least it doesn't cancel it out.
Orlando Herrera writes, I'm a professional cinematographer and camera operator, and I dabble with iOS and now visionOS development as a hobby. Based on my observations, the pass-through cameras are at the heart of the color and motion blur issues when using pass-through. I suspect the shutter speed of the cameras is slower, possibly to reduce the risk of triggering adverse reactions in individuals who are sensitive to strobing. You can see the degree of motion blur change based on whether or not you are in a well-lit environment versus a dim environment. You can also observe that the pass-through video motion blur is different than the motion blur of visionOS windows, which further indicates it's the cameras, not the OLED screens, that cause this behavior. Similarly, I think the vibrancy, saturation, and depth of colors when viewing visionOS windows and content is higher than the pass-through because the pass-through color bit depth is lower to reduce processing time so the device can maintain its low latency target. I imagine an improved pair of processors in a future device could increase the color bit depth while maintaining low latency so the pass-through experience could gain HDR and a higher percentage of the P3 gamut.
Do you find this rings true to you? Because I'm asking about the motion blur, which I didn't notice myself. Is does the pass-through have different motion blur than like window contents?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person. I can't. I don't see it either, so I'm not sure.
I mean, this makes sense to me because like the cameras on the Vision Pro are, I mean, they're fine, but they're not going to be, the fidelity of things that are being drawn in visionOS is obviously going to be as perfect as it can be because they're not passing through a camera and a sensor or whatever. And yeah, cameras with sensors that small, especially if the room is dark, they're going to have to keep the shutters open for a longer period of time to get enough light, and that's definitely going to cause blur. But what I had heard is for, some people complaining that there was a blur on things when they move their head, including things like windows of visionOS applications.
Yeah, in my experience, I think any kind of motion blurring is true of the visionOS windows as well. I noticed it in particular when trying to like scroll text and read it in Safari, just within the Vision Pro Safari app. Again, it's not like unusable, but if you notice the motion blur in other areas, you will notice it there too. We are brought to you this week exclusively by ATP members. Please consider joining and becoming a member today. Here's why you might want to do that. So for me personally, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and my favorite shows, if they offer a membership program, I will almost always buy it because what they usually offer is an ad-free version of the show and usually also a little bit of bonus content. And to me, those are the two reasons to buy a membership. Our membership here at ATP offers both of those, plus a few other things as well. So the ad-free version of the show, nice and easy. You get the same show everyone else gets, but with the ads removed. So it's very convenient. I always love that. I kind of feel like it's a premium experience when I'm listening to a show and there's no ads in it that I have to skip over or whatever. Then we also do bonus episodes. These are episodes exclusively for members that come out about once a month on a pretty wide variety of topics. We do like tier rankings of different tech products. We do movie reviews. We do a couple of other food things and a couple other fun things. So it's always a lot of fun. And if you like us and you like our content, you'll probably like a little bit more of it. And especially with the freedom to go off in a couple of different directions that we wouldn't normally cover on the main show, that's what the bonus episodes do. And we offer a bootleg feed. This gives you the unedited live stream recording. So this is everything that we record from beginning to end on the live episodes. It's basically the unedited raw version of the show. So you have a bit of bonus stuff on the beginning and end of that. Any topic or feedback that we end up cutting from in the edit will remain in the bootleg. You get to hear Casey swearing. You get to hear any of my jokes that don't land that I edit out of the published version to make myself sound funnier. All that's available in the bootleg. And you get the bootleg right after we finish recording. So it comes out usually about 12 to 16 hours before the main show. So you get a little bit early release in a more raw version of it. And a lot of our members actually prefer to listen that way. I think it's kind of cool, actually. So anyway, that's the main thing you're getting with our membership. Ad-free version of the show, access to the bootleg if you want it, and the bonus episodes for exclusive member content. Check it out today, atp.fm/join. You can get it for just $8 a month, or equivalents in a couple other currencies. We also have annual plans, gift memberships, all sorts of fun stuff. So once again, atp.fm/join. Become a member today. It is by far the best way to support the show. Thank you so much. And now back to the show.
Gottfried Chen writes, I recently saw an interview using Meta's version of personas called Codec avatars. They are basically photorealistic, but the scanning process is highly complex and not feasible with consumer hardware. I think it shows that the current technical challenge is the high-quality scan. The interview was done using Quest Pro, which I assume is inferior to Vision Pro regarding device sensors. So I wonder if Apple should offer high-quality Persona scanning stations in Apple stores so you can do an optional HD scan if you want. I mean, I don't know one way or the other, but I will tell you that I saw, a couple of stills from this video, and my goodness, the quality is night and day better than the Personas. And I say this as a Persona apologist.
Well, so here's the thing about the avatars, these codec avatars. Obviously, setting aside the fact that I don't know what they use to scan them. Maybe they use like the fancy laser scanner or whatever, but it's not, as we said the last time we discussed this, the miracle of the Personas is you take the headset that you bought and you just point it at your face for 2 seconds and it gives you one. This is something else. But the uncanny valley, which people just throw out that phrase without re-explaining it and just assume everyone knows what it is. But the uncanny valley is the idea, which I don't think has ever really been proven out, but people just accept it because it feels right to them. But anyway, the idea is that as you make something more and more realistic looking, it gets more and more appealing to you until you get really, really close to it being like perfect. Like, wow, this is totally convincing as a human. And you get really, really close to it. And then it takes a huge dip. And that is the uncanny valley. It's like, boy, I was liking these avatars more and more as you made them better and better. But then all of a sudden, right when you got close to them being perfect, now I don't like it at all because it's a scary death mask, right? There's a lot of questions with this. How close do you have to get to being perfect for the uncanny valley to take place? If you look at the original paper or whatever, it's just kind of like a wavy line graph, and it's like they don't really make any strong stances about how close you have to get. It's just a general trend. It's like things look better right up until they don't, but then after you're perfect again, people like them. And this is all about how does it feel to a person? How does it appeal to a person? Because you want your avatar to be appealing, not repulsive to a person. I say all this because these much more finely detailed, much more photorealistic avatars, the codec avatars from Facebook, are, I think, further into the uncanny valley than Personas because they are closer to being perfect. They're better. Like in that uncanny valley graph, I think they are like over the edge of the roller coaster thing and screaming down the middle of it. Like, so the Personas ones, what they have going for them is that their blurriness and sort of slight cartoonishness helps keep them, in my opinion anyway, in my personal uncanny valley graph for these, farther up the hill, farther up the big dip that is the uncanny valley in that graph. You can take a look. We'll link to the paper about this and Facebook's video about it from a couple of years ago, a couple months ago. You can decide whether you think that it is farther into your uncanny valley or not. But part of the problem with doing like actual photorealistic humans, where there's not a bunch of like fuzzy Gaussian blur around everything and sort of, a little bit of caricature, is that as, people who make 3D movies and games have known for many, many years, it's really difficult to do convincing humans because we know what they look like. And things like subsurface scattering underneath translucent skin, a technology that was sort of pioneered maybe 15 years ago and is now pretty commonplace, is necessary for you to not look like you're not made of plastic. And I think this is doing that, but doing that well gets expensive real fast. And then if you see these things in motion, they're not... You'll see the video of it where you can see the actual human wearing the headset, and then you see their avatar. And I feel like if you look at the motion of the human, the avatar seems stiffer. Like maybe they're not moving all the parts of it. Like maybe the mouth doesn't move quite as much. And when the mouth moves, like the earlobe doesn't move. And you might not think those are connected, but on a person, like when you talk, more than just your lips moves. And that's very difficult to do unless you carefully model or observe that, which is why I think Apple's Personas, when you look at this, Apple's Personas start to look a lot more like Memojis because Apple has chosen the 3 or 4 or 5 most important parts that need to move, and they've probably put in some simple heuristics of saying, look, we can't tell when their earlobe twitches, but basically every time they make this noise at this volume with this mouth sound, move their earlobe a little bit or whatever. And I think they're doing a little bit more of like what animators do, which is just give me the gist of it and use what you know about how people talk to make it convincing. These ones look a little bit more death masky to me, but hey, everyone has their own opinion on these, so you should take a look. And as for the question, though, should Apple have high-quality Persona scanning stations? Well, I think not if they end up looking like this. But either way, it's not feasible. Like if they ever end up selling a whole bunch of Vision Pros, you can't have people lining up at the Apple store to get their scans. The whole point is the device should do it for you, so that they should continue to work the solution the way they have. You buy the device, you take it home, you do the scan in the privacy of your own home after you've done your hair and makeup the way you like it, tweak it to your heart's content, and they should just keep making that better rather than saying you need to come in for a 3-hour session in our laser scanning booth.
I disagree with you with regard to these codec avatars. I think these look incredible. I really, really do. And to me, the personas, which again, I am a defender of the personas. I think that they are a pretty good idea and they work pretty well. I think the codec avatars look way, way better.
Do you think they're on the other side of the uncanny valley, or they haven't dipped into it yet? Do you know the uncanny valley chart I'm talking about? I got to find out.
Yeah. I think that the the personas are dipping into the uncanny valley. I certainly don't think they're at the bottom of the uncanny valley by any stretch, but I think they're dipping in.
But if you think the personas look better, then the personas aren't even in the uncanny valley for you yet, right?
Correct. Yep, I would agree with that. Well, I would agree with that retelling of my opinion. I don't want to imply that you feel the same way.
So this is kind of like a Bezos chart. I just put a link from the Wikipedia page to the uncanny valley thing, and I mean, I guess like where is the dip? Is it like at 90-ish%? It's very fudgy.
Yeah. No, to me, I feel like the personas are starting down the cliff, but they haven't fallen yet. And I feel like this is comfortably on the upswing, if not the top, on the other side of the valley, for me.
You think of the other side. All right, well, maybe you need to play more video games.
Yeah, actually, that's probably true. That's actually a really, really good point.
Because these look about as good as, like, the cutscenes in Last of Us Part 2, for example.
No, that's a really good point, actually. I think you were saying it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think you're right. Because I very rarely play any video games, I don't know what the state of the art is on this sort of stuff yet. But kind of tangentially related to this, recently I did a podcast with Wojciech. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. I'm so sorry. But it was a Polish podcast, which obviously I don't speak Polish, but he speaks phenomenal English. And we did this in the same style as Gruber in Sandwich with Adam Lissagor on the talk show. And we were doing this just with our personas. And I've never met him in person. And so I don't know what he looks like. And to me, his persona looked completely good, like completely great even. But I think that's in no small part, in fact, entirely because I don't know what he actually looks like. Like I've seen photographs of him, from time to time.
I bet his hair is not blurry in real life.
It was fair, but but I think you get the point I'm driving at is when you don't have a relationship, a physical relationship with this person, insofar as you've never been in the same space before, I thought the personas were great, actually. It didn't feel unnatural to me at all. Now, that would be very different if I was talking to you or Marco or Mike or Jason or what have you. But for an instance where this person who is not a stranger, but is sort of kind of a stranger, like I'm underselling our relationship, but you get my point. It was very passable to me. And then there's a video, there's a YouTube video, which we'll link in the show notes if you want to see this for yourself. But I thought it was really good. Teach your own. All right, moving right along. There's a gate now for the Vision Pro, and it's Crackgate. Some Apple Vision Pro units develop an identical crack in the cover glass, reports Mac Rumors. A small number of Apple Vision Pro owners have claimed that their headsets developed a hairline crack right down the middle of the front cover glass, despite never having been dropped or mishandled. And there's a link in this article that makes it pretty clear what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of thing, like it looks like, kind of a standard, manufacturing defect or weakness with like a certain stress point in the glass that probably is, no fault of the people who are using it. Again, it's unfortunate, but it's a version 1 product of a very, very complicated design. So this kind of stuff happens. They'll fix it. It'll be fine in the long run. All right.
There is breaking news. This was just today, wasn't it, as we record? Mm-hmm. Apple has officially canceled Project Titan, ending a decade-long and allegedly $10 billion efforts. This is reported by Bloomberg and also the New York Times. We'll put links in the show notes. From Bloomberg, Apple Inc. is canceling a decade-long effort to build an electric car, according to people with knowledge of the matter, abandoning one of the most ambitious projects in the history of the company. Apple made the disclosure internally Tuesday, surprising the nearly 2,000 employees working on the project.
Was it really that much of a surprise?
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, fair. The decision was shared by Chief Operating Officer Jeff Williams and Kevin Lynch, a vice president in charge of the effort. The two executives told staffers that the project will begin winding down and that many employees on the team working on the car, known as the Special Projects Group or SPG, will be shifted to the Artificial Intelligence Division under Executive John Gianandrea, something like that, I'm sorry. Those employees will focus on generative AI projects, an increasingly key priority for the company.
There's an interesting confluence of events here because the fact that they're taking some employees, first some employees are going to be leaving. The people who knew how to build cars, I'm not sure Apple needs those people. But shifting the other employees to AI projects made me think of exactly, I was even thinking of blogging this, but I didn't have time because it just came out today. how I would sum up this, 10-year foray into the car project, as we always called it, Project Titan, for Apple. And it's related to AI. When I was a kid, I read a lot about computers and stuff, and I used to read a lot about AI because who wouldn't? It's cool. You watch 2001, you learn about computers. You want to learn about computers that are like HAL 9000 but don't kill people.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, seriously, I've never seen it.
Sorry. When are computers going to be smart and talk like people? That'll be so cool. It's all in all the science fiction. Let me learn about where computers are today. And let me tell you, when I was a kid in the 70s, you'd see stories on PBS and books that I'd check out of the library and stuff that would say like, look, here's this computer they made, and here's what it can do. And people were super excited. They're like, look what we've made this do. I know it doesn't seem that smart to you, but I can talk to it and ask it questions, and it understands the sentence, and it knows what the different parts of the sentence mean, and it can reason about things and make inferences and respond to me. And people were so excited about that. And they'd say, and you know what? Look at computer chips. It's 1974, but in 1975, computer chips are going to be even better. And then 1976, they're going to be even better. And if you extrapolate on this graph, you can see that in the year 2000, computer chips are just going to be massively more powerful than they are now. And then you look at this AI thing and look what we've done now, and it's kind of dumb now, but we're on the right track, right? And so if we just follow this graph, by the year 1988, computers should be smarter than any human on the planet. And this is what I read about when I was a kid. And when I got a little bit older, you kind of realize that since the 60s or the 50s or whenever they first tried to do this, everybody thought HAL 9000 is going to be like, at most 20 years in the future, because just look at this graph, right? I mean, I didn't know the term Moore's Law then or whatever, but I was experiencing the advance of technology, which was my computers were getting faster and faster all the time. And the video games I played in the 70s were so much worse than the video games I played in the 80s and 90s or whatever. So I was living the progression, and yet artificial intelligence before the current AI trend, that is in a computer that thinks and talks like a person, like, again, HAL 9000, but not murderous, or any other things you see in sci-fi. Very smart people really believed that, although what we have now is not great, in 5 to 10 years, it'll be better. And in 20 years, it will be the most intelligent thing on the planet Earth. And as part of my, I talked about this in Rectifs ages ago, the discovering the parameters of the world. Can you move things with your mind? How big is the universe? Are we going to make computers that think? One of the parameters of the world was people always kind of think break-even fusion and artificial intelligence are much closer than they actually are. And as excited as I was about it, as the years went by, and you saw the same stories, and everyone said it's probably 5 to 10 years in the future, you figured out that these people hadn't yet found the right approach to this problem. We found the right approach to flying, which is like fixed-wing aircraft with engines. We found the right approach to doing math, because we're getting really good at that with our computer chips. That approach, we just like, that's the way, just start scaling it, and that's served us well up until today. But we haven't yet found the right approach to computers that can think. And so with the car project, Apple, like all those excited scientists in the 70s that I was reading about, and like so many other companies in the world, had decided that cars that drive themselves are probably right around the corner. Look what we can do now. It's pretty impressive. And if we just extrapolate and say, if we just continue along this path and our computing resources get better, like in, 5 to 10 years, all of our cars are going to have no steering wheels and they're going to be driving ourselves, because look at our progress and look what we're already able to do in such a short time. Surely by insert year that has already passed here, all cars will be self-driving and driving will be obsolete. And that's why Apple embarked on this project, because if that's going to be a thing, that is a big disruption to the transportation world, and Apple should probably be in on that. And they were focusing on making a car that was autonomous in some way. And if you're wondering why Apple thinks they should make a car, it's not because they just wanted to make something in an industry, like in a low margin industry they wanted to get a part of. They're like, well, this industry is about to be disrupted. In fact, we'll put a link in the show notes to Tim Cook, an interview in 2017 where the interviewer was asking him essentially about the car project or about automotive stuff. And Tim Cook flat out says, I think there's a disruption coming, and it's because of autonomy. And Apple wants to be in on that in whatever vague way he said it, to not, mention unreleased products. A lot of people thought that. Uber thought that. We hire drivers now, but kind of like Netflix sent people DVDs for a while. That's just how we're going to start. Eventually, we're not going to need the drivers. The cars will drive themselves. So many companies looked at what they had, and just like the AI people said, this is amazing, and in 5 years, it will be so much better. Turns out they did not have the right approach. No one has the right approach yet. No one knows how to make a car that can drive itself as well as humans can drive in all conditions. It's not like it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten way, way better. Waymo has cars that can totally drive themselves in limited circumstances and limited areas, doing a pretty good job. But even Waymo is approaching the limits of the techniques that it has been using. So Apple failing on this project is just a consequence of us collectively as humans having not yet found the correct approach to make a car that drives itself. We can make a car that helps you drive a little bit better, and the jury's still out on whether it helps you or not based on, you actually paying attention or not. But we haven't found the right approach where it's like, if we just do this for 5 more years, we'll be there. Unlike, for example, adding numbers together in your CPU. We found the right approach for that, right? Or planes or whatever. And that's disappointing for everybody involved. If you're wondering why Apple spent $10 billion in 10 years doing this, important people at Apple, like Tim Cook, or if you read the New York Times story, Johnny Ive, had convinced themselves or had been convinced by the hype or the other people they respect in the industry that this was a thing they thought they could do. Like they said, look at what Tesla's, for example, been able to do now. We're smarter than them, and they're already almost there. Let's get on this. Maybe we can beat them to it, because surely one of us is going to crack this problem in the next 5 years. And the answer was no. No one's going to crack it in the next 5 years. No one's going to crack it in the next 10 years. When are we going to crack it? I don't know. Is the current approach the right one? Seems like not. But maybe it is, and we just have to do it for 20 more years. But talk to the AI people. Everyone thinks what we've done is amazing. What we've achieved is amazing. Extrapolate, and we'll get there. And this is yet another disappointing instance in my adult life of large portions of smart people in the world thinking that a thing was right around the corner and it wasn't, which is weird, because most of the time, if you listen to a tech podcast or you're interested in tech, most of the time tech does sort of fulfill our dreams even more so. Like computers really did get way better. Video games got so much better. So much. If you could take child me and show them to mention again, The Last of Us Part 2, it would have exploded my brain. Right? That really did happen, just like everyone thought it do. In fact, maybe even faster. The internet, look at that. It happened so much faster than people thought it wasn't. People underestimated that. But sometimes, if you think something is around the corner, sometimes you're going to be wrong, because it turns out you're barking up the wrong tree. And I think all of humanity so far has been barking up the wrong tree on getting cars that can drive themselves as well as humans in all conditions. And that's sad for the little versions of me who are 7 years old checking books out of the library about self-driving cars now, and they're going to have to learn that I guess they just didn't figure it out. Doesn't mean we're never going to figure it out. We might eventually, but let's say Apple is taking a break for a few decades before they take another run at this, because if it does become plausible, they should probably dive back in and participate in this industry. But right now, I think even Waymo had a big thing where they were like, yeah, we're kind of giving up on the whole self-driving everywhere thing, and we're just concentrating on limited circumstances. Everyone who has tried this has, as they say in Dune, they tried and failed, they tried and died. Well, they didn't die, but the projects died. So I think this is unsurprising, but disappointing for little kids everywhere.
No, I think the car project, we've been saying for a long time now that we didn't really understand why they were doing this. Obviously, it's very hard to judge with something that's this secretive. We don't really know how much progress they were making, but it sure has seemed like over time this project has not been going well. We've heard of a number of reboots and reorganizations and changing directions. There's been so much, change in the project, trying to, I guess, get it to go in a good direction.
Well, on that though, in the 2017 video, Tim Cook flat out says, we think there's going to be disruption in the automotive industry, and it's because of self-driving and automation, essentially, right? But then the most recent reboot that we heard about and talked about on the show was Apple said, yeah, forget about self-driving. We're just going to do we're still going to do a car, but it'll just be current sort of driver aid type stuff. And that was not the vision, according to Tim Cook in 2017. It's not we just want to make a car because we want to make a car. he thought there was going to be disruption related to automation. And that basically turned out to not be the case in the time frame that they cared about. And so changing the project, like, oh, well, let's reboot it, but now we're just going to make a plain old car that's like everyone else's car, is not an exciting project. And I'm very glad that Apple chose not to do it.
Even if they had gotten the self-driving part to progress further, and that was still the plan for the project, even then, I still don't think Apple is the right company to do that for lots of reasons. It doesn't really fit a lot of their business, shape and style and principles. We discussed recently how it seemed to be almost impossible to fit that into their new carbon goals, for instance. Like, their goal with carbon neutrality is to have their products be carbon neutral end to end over their entire lifetime, including the energy they use during their useful lives. That's really hard for a car.
Well, the rumor is it was going to be like $100,000, so maybe they'd sell so few of them that they could carbon offset every single one that they sold because the volumes would be low. But yeah, it's different. I do really wonder. I mean, maybe when they made that commitment, they kind of knew that the car project was going to get canceled, because you either don't sell a lot of cars and do a lot of carbon offsets, or you can't meet your goals, because they can't transform the world's energy infrastructure to be carbon neutral to power all their cars.
No, and so that I feel like the carbon plan was always at direct odds with the car project, and I don't know how they could have possibly ever resolved that. And then the other thing is, like, we've heard through a few different channels about Tim Cook really believing very strongly, allegedly even saying directly, Apple products don't kill people, period. Like, Apple does not make products that kill people, at least directly. Obviously, you can text in your phone and crash, but they feel very strongly about that, and I think that's a very good thing, both for the world and, of course, on a smaller level for their brand.
And it's a luxury. It's a luxury because they're a company that currently doesn't sell things that can directly kill you, right? And so they're thinking of getting into a business where you can't avoid that. Cars, people die in car accidents, right? So I don't know how he would square that stance, or that's just like a soundbite, really. But like, the idea is we don't want to be a company that does that, but we also want to get into the car business. Well, I have some bad news for you about cars. There's no such thing as a car that doesn't sometimes kill people due to car accidents. At least not yet. Maybe they thought they could make one again with the self-driving thing, but that's kind of like, you're making that choice. Like, you could just keep making phones and computers and they're not going to like crash into you and kill you, right? But you're choosing to try for a car, and that's changing things up.
Again, we've been wondering for years why this project was still going on. It seemed like it was a pretty long shot from the start, and it seemed like it was never going super well. So I'm glad to hear that they finally axed it. Obviously, for all the tumult this is going to cause the actual people working on it, including probably a bunch of lost jobs, that's not great. But for the company strategically and for the leadership to have chosen a direction, I think they made the right call. I kind of don't know why they didn't make it years ago, but I'm sure they had their reasons. Whatever the reasons were, now they've made the right call. This project is seemingly, really finally dead. And I think it's better that they don't continue to waste all of this experimental money and opportunity cost on a project that's very unlikely to ever be very good for them, because now they have freed up that capacity. Maybe not the exact people, because it's different specialties, but they've at least freed up like that organizational capacity.
That money, how about that?
Sure. The money's a big part of it, of course, but also just, focus, talent, like there's other limited resources they have. Now they can focus that on products and improvements to their other products that are much more likely to actually benefit them and their customers. The car project was always kind of this, massive moonshot. It was very, very expensive. And so if they're now redirecting that towards things like better Siri, which is what, or whatever we're going to call all their new AI efforts, that's way more likely to both A, succeed, and B, to actually benefit their customers in useful ways and to benefit the rest of their products together. Like, we see what Apple does. They share a lot of tech, they share a lot of advancements, they share a lot of software between all the different platforms. They share parts, they share techniques, that they share manufacturing, strategies and things between all the different platforms. They share supplies and suppliers. With the car, it was always kind of like, does this have any chance of benefiting their other products? Not much. How would it even fit into their retail strategy? Who knows?
I mean, it's not even clear from the outside how much CarPlay was shared with Project Titan.
It seemed like not at all. So like, except maybe like some dashboard design concept.
Yeah, or maybe some underlying stuff. Like it's so hard to tell. And on this topic, by the way, not to get back into Vision Pro, but this is something that's come up with all the demos. Like when you see obviously ARKit and stuff, we saw all that coming out to iOS and macOS, and it's like, oh, that's going to be for the headset, right? And there's a connection there, right? But now that Vision Pro is out and you see universal control, it's easy to just retcon it and say, I bet they did universal control for the headset, and it just came out earlier on Mac and iOS. That could be true, or it could be the reverse. They did it on Mac and iOS, and the headset team adopted it. But that's the nature of things inside Apple. They will share things between their projects when it makes sense to get the most value out of it. And from the outside, it's very difficult to tell. Did, for example, universal control start with the headset team and trickle down to iOS and macOS? Or was it the reverse? It doesn't really matter. Either way, they're getting the most bang for the buck out of that technology they developed. They developed universal control, and it has broad applicability across their products. And so now you look at the car project. What things in macOS, iOS, iPadOS, or whatever, have broad applicability to the car and vice versa. And, you go for CarPlay. It's like, well, CarPlay, that's got to be a thing. But because we know so little about the car and because CarPlay is such a odd duck, it's like maybe not even that was shared. So the best you can come up with is maybe whatever real-time operating system and tooling and stuff they came up with for the car, they'll find a use for. But it's so hard to tell from the outside. And the synergies are not quite as obvious as universal control or ARKit.
Yeah, and I think there's probably just fewer of them in general, and that's why I think axing this project is the right move strategically for the company, because now whatever the special projects group can work on can be things that the company might have actual other uses for in much larger scales. Because we see with Apple, they historically were very bad at multitasking. They've gotten a lot better in recent years, but still, you don't really want them, as a fan of their products and as a customer of their products, you don't really want them to have massive distraction projects that don't benefit the products you use. With Vision Pro, we actually see that there is a decent amount of shared innovation between Vision Pro and their other products, probably, that we as customers were able to benefit from. With the car, it seems like whatever we would benefit from that would be much more limited with the other products.
That was kind of an advantage, though, because you felt like, well, they hired a lot of new car people to work on the car, so those people weren't even at Apple to begin with, so you're not stealing that many people from other teams. And because there's so little crossover, I think for the 10 years that this project ran, it was a money pit, and maybe it did suck in some important talent, but it was less of a drain than, for example, iOS and the iPhone were. Or where Jobs came out on stage and said, yeah, you're not getting a new version of macOS because we put all those people on the phone because it's more important. Sorry. I'm sure that did happen, but to a lesser extent, just because so many more people had to be hired from the car industry. So that was one blessing. And I think that's part of the reason this project lasted so long, like the open secret that they were doing this, and it didn't sideline the whole company for a decade, right? The company continued to do what it was doing. Yes, there was some impact, but the iPhone shoved the whole company off of its previous track, and eventually it found a new track. Project Titan didn't do that. Project Titan was just like a $10 billion quiet little leech off in the corner, but Apple continued to be able to function in its main business.
I mean, and it's a very different company, in that decade than it was before that as well. So obviously, that's a different scenario. But I do think it's interesting, though, to consider, for years, we had heard about these two giant Skunkworks projects, the car and the headset. Well, now the car's dead and we have the headset. What do you think is the next big Apple Skunkworks project that isn't out yet? I guess, AI in general could be something like that. And I'm sure we're going to see more of that, as the rumors indicate, probably this summer. And honestly, I'm very much looking forward to whatever this ends up being. But do we know of any other large rumored Skunkworks projects that seem at all plausible that Apple has been working on?
I think this is the time maybe to talk about this, which I think will very clearly probably quickly not happen, and we don't have to think about it. But because of this announcement, people who really want Apple to make a car have been saying, Apple, if you've decided that disruption in the automotive market is not imminent due to self-driving, which I think is the correct conclusion, but you still want to be in the automotive market because you think people in your team know how to make cool dashboard things like the new CarPlay, or you just want to you want a new platform that you can own, you want to own the infotainment stack or whatever. there's still a way for Apple to be in the car business. And part of the thing when we've talked about the car project in the past, we're like, Apple's good at making electronic gadgets. And if you squint, you can call a car an electronic gadget. But honestly, there's a whole bunch of parts of that are not electronic gadgetry, like suspension and brakes. And Apple just doesn't really make anything.
Yeah, that's kind of like saying like my oven is an electric gadget because it has a control panel on the front of it. Like,
yeah, things that you sit inside that travel, like the skill set required to do that. And that's before you even get to stuff like the batteries, which I know Apple has some knowledge about from all of its gadgets, but it's a different scale entirely there. And electrical motors, which, there are some in the Vision Pro, I guess, but not Apple's area of expertise for sure. But if Apple still wants to be in the electric car business, they could buy Lucid and Rivian and have some cars, SUVs, and trucks that would, suddenly support CarPlay. Yay. And they would have, instant expertise. Lucid has the best powertrains in the entire industry and the best EV packaging in the entire industry.
Oh, we're going to get so much email. Please don't do that, John. You're just tempting them now.
It's not, this is not a questionable, I think is 100% defensible.
God, you're making it worse.
Just based on the numbers. How big is the engine? How much power does it produce? How efficient is it? Lucid has the best electric powertrains in the industry. They might not have the best batteries, but their batteries are pretty good. Rivian is really the only game in town for sort of non-mainstream fancy Apple-style pickup trucks and truck-like SUVs because, the mainstream makers make them, but Rivian is the froofy kind of Apple-ish brand. And the important thing about Apple buying both of those, one, it will probably cost less money than they already spent on Project Titan. Two, everything those companies do is stuff that Apple, as far as I know, does not know how to do. Like all the rumors of like they're going to build their own car, they're like, oh, here's who they're going to build it for them or whatever. I'm like, do you think Apple's going to get the kind, like the people who started Lucid were all like the lead engineer for the Tesla Model S started Lucid. Like they cut their teeth at Tesla and then they came over and did Lucid. Apple has done none of those things. So they think out of the gate, they're going to come up with an electric car that they, solve all these manufacturing problems before everyone else has such a head start on them. I know they said the same thing about the cell phones. The PC people aren't going to walk in, but let me tell you, a cell phone is much closer to a personal computer than a car is. It's a big gap there, right? So if they wanted to be in this business because they think, I don't know, I think they shouldn't because it's a low margin business and Apple products don't kill people and yada, yada. If they're not going to be self-driving, there's no real point. But if they really want to, a much faster and better way to spend that money is to save these two companies that are currently having some difficulties, harvest all the people and technology that they have, and voila, now you have a line of Apple cars. If Tim Cook decides, he's the CEO, and if he and the board think that Apple should be selling EVs, that is, I think, the only reasonable way to do it in a reasonable time frame. If not, again, let's just revisit, making a car in 20 to 50 years, and maybe the self-driving thing will be more plausible then. But yeah, like I'm with Marco that I'm relieved that they're not doing this because once they're not making a self-driving thing, which it's been obvious that they're not going to do for a while now, to everyone except for apparently Apple, just making a car is not something I have any faith that Apple would be any good at all. Like nothing they've done makes me think, boy, if only Apple would make a car, they'd be great at it. Nope, absolutely not. And making car is ask Rivian, ask Tesla, ask Lucid. Making cars is very, very difficult. It's not something that you get right on the first try or the second try or the third try. Car companies have been around for a long time. They've had time to work out a lot of this stuff. And even they get stuck in their ways, which is why people can innovate around them. But like, just the first several years of Tesla, the first several years of Rivian and Lucid, manufacturing big, important things like that, complying with regulations, making them safe, reliable, it's really hard. And Apple has never done anything like that at that scale. And it is so different than cell phones and computers that I don't think they could pull it off. So if they really, really want to do this, make some acquisitions. Buy the struggling. They tried to buy Tesla. You can read the story. They tried to buy Tesla way back when. So it's clear that they were open to that idea. But if the car dream is still alive at Apple, they should buy Lucid and Rivian. I hope the car dream is not alive at Apple, and they should just ignore this for another 50 years.
Well, I think if anything, first of all, I think you're right. That would be probably the best way for them to get into it at this point. But if anything, that shows why they shouldn't get into the car business. Because suppose tomorrow Apple buys Lucid and Rivian. Okay, now what? Like, why did they do that? And then how do they integrate that into the rest of their business? Well, it's still a massive question of like, now Apple's a car company. Great. Now, why do they want to be a car company? And now they have to deal with being a car company.
Right, but they would give them two car companies that are already car companies, and they're car companies with problems, and there's a lot of growing pains, but they jumpstart it. Like, they don't have to worry, like, will we make a car that people want? Will we make a good car? Those two companies have already made cars that people want that are good. They're just not making money making them. So Apple Apple has the runway has a little bit more runway than those two companies do to figure out a way to start making them profitable. And obviously they would integrate with them. And I think Jeff Johnson had a good snarky tweet about this whole thing, which is snarky, but also I think there's kind of a point in that why Apple might want to be in this historically low margin business. He says, bemoaning the end of the car project, but I so wanted a car that demanded 30% of every shopping trip and refused to travel to destinations unapproved by the manufacturer.
Got him.
But like, that's the thing. That's kind of the reason Apple was interested in this thing is like, oh, the automotive market is being disrupted. And if the automotive market is being disrupted, that is an opportunity for us to find another place for one of our platforms. And modern Apple, when they find a place for one of their platforms, they're like, we need to have a platform which we will then leverage to extract, 30% from everybody, right? That's their MO. Hasn't been going that great, but they hit it out of the park once with the iPhone. And so they've used that model for every other new platform they've tried to roll out. Apple TV, Vision Pro, iPad. I know those all kind of look like, you squint and like, oh, that's just an extension of the iPhone, right? But the inside of the car, the inside of any sort of inside of cars are looking more and more like a platform that Apple could participate in. The trouble is, if Apple isn't literally a car company, it might be difficult to pull a Microsoft and become the software platform for everybody else's hardware. Apple's trying, but there's a little bit of pushback and tension there. So why would Apple want to be in the car business at all? I think cars will continue to be low margin, but I think there is a potential future to, using the terminology, extracting rents from the software platform that lives inside cars. Certainly every car manufacturer wants to do that. Just ask GM. That's why they don't want CarPlay in the car. They want to be the one, skimming off the top of everything that happens inside the car that they can. I'm not sure there's a business plan there. Apparently it's not renting heated seats to people like BMW tried. But I think that's, in the absence of self-driving disruption, another place for a platform is, I think, what would still have a chance to attract Apple to cars. But who knows? Like, maybe the CarPlay project is that, and they don't need to make a car. It's too early to tell.
I don't know. I'm going back to what you were saying about Lucid and Rivian, and the co-host of Neutral in me says, heck yeah, that sounds amazing. Because I think Rivian is arguably more spiritually similar to Apple than Tesla. I think that Lucid, to your point, has some of the best and most advanced technology. Please don't email us, Tesla people. We don't care. So I agree with you as a car enthusiast. As someone who at least tries to watch and understand Apple, I can't imagine them saying about a business, as you've noted, is very low margin, which they can't be too keen on to begin with. I can't imagine they're going to say, let's spend a sum total of roughly $20 billion, because that's the sum total of the market cap of the two companies today. Let's spend $20 billion on two companies that are barely keeping themselves afloat. Like, what's...
Well, you wait a little bit longer, Lucid will get cheaper, I think.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And so might Rivian.
But then, I mean, so we're buying these beleaguered, failing companies. Yeah, we're getting them on the cheap. But if they were good, they wouldn't be beleaguered and cheap,
No, that's not true at all. Like, their problem is they don't, like, their problem is they need to get through like the scary growth period. Like the Tesla barely made it through. Like Tesla almost went out of business several times too, right? But it takes so much capital to sort of get the ball rolling, to work out all the kinks. And both of them are kind of on the bubble. Like they're probably going to make it, but Tesla just like barely made it due to like some savvy fundraising and government mooching from Elon Musk at the right time, right? Like it's a tough gig in the car business. So I don't think they're beleaguered because they have bad products. They have great products. They're just beleaguered because making a car costs a lot of money, and they're not entirely sure that they'll get past the point where like they're just plowing in money, and then they're selling a smallish number of cars for very low or negative margins, and it's like just kind of like Amazon. It's like, just give us another decade to not make any profit, but eventually we will. And Amazon did eventually, and they had that runway. Rivian and Lucid remains to be seen if they will be able to find the funding to give themselves that runway. But you know who can give them that funding? Apple.
I mean, that's true, but I just don't think Apple would have that kind of patience, especially after having been burned by being $10 billion in and having not a lot to show for it.
Well, they did have the patience for that 10-year boondoggle project that went nowhere. So
I mean, that's true. Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't ultimately matter, but it is an interesting thought exercise, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like Apple will not do this because I think they're done with cars for a while, right? But
yeah,
if someone inside Apple just demands it, no, we need to be in cars, which I don't think is true, because again, if Tim Cook's whole reason was that it was about self-driving disruption, I think he's now dissuaded of that and he's fine. But if someone demanded it, that would be the only feasible way to do it. Because if they didn't and they tried to make a car on their own, I think it'd be embarrassing for them, because their car they wouldn't have to worry about losing money because they got so much money, but they'd make a car, and that car would have to compete with beleaguered Rivian, Lucid, and then not beleaguered Tesla, right? And I don't think it would fare that well, because I don't think Apple is good at almost any of the things you need to be good at to make a good car. So, yeah, I think they should leave it alone. But if they don't want to leave it alone, they should buy Rivian and Tesla. And heck, even if they don't want to be in the car business at all, Apple should just, give an investment to Lucid and reap it when the company comes roaring back 2 decades from now.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I think I am certainly in support of Apple, letting go and stop trying to make fetch happen. I echo what I think it was Marco who had said, I feel terrible for all these people that are going to now have to find either new jobs within Apple or new jobs entirely. Like that stinks. But I think on the whole, it's better for Apple to go this way. I think it might be interesting seeing people who surely are very good at, computer vision and artificial intelligence and things of that nature, working on other projects and problems inside of Apple. I think, I suspect a lot has been learned from this. And I feel like I made the same, I shared the same theory a while back, and I feel like somebody debunked it. But here I am again thinking that, I wonder if the real-time OS or some of the things that they learned building a real-time OS for the car were used in the R1 for the Vision Pro. And I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, that was debunked. But I think you'd have a good point with the computer vision aspect, because Apple does now have a platform that could benefit from computer vision expertise. And so those people on the car project who are probably super isolated from the headset project, because why wouldn't they be? Bring those people to Vision Pro now, because that is expert. Even if it's not technology that they're currently using that crosses over, that expertise for sure crosses over.
Well, and now also, with this talent and budget and executive focus freed up from this project, if you think about what else could they do, even without having good uses of shared technology with their other products, they could do something like pour more money into the idea of a glucose monitor for the Apple Watch. Yeah,
I think they're already doing that. But yeah, freeing up the money is good for everything across the board. Of course, if you told me what they should give the money to, it's just fixing bugs in macOS. But I don't think that's probably going to be high on their list. But just take a little bit of that $10 billion or whatever it is, $1 billion a year that you just freed up, put a little slice of that into macOS bug fixing, please.
I don't think it would even take that much.
Yeah, in terms of what the next big thing is, it's we said this in our first episode in January 2024, we did what do we expect this year to be for Apple? And I think one of the things that we got right, based on all of the stories that are coming out, 2024, the year when Apple sprinkles AI sauce on a bunch of stuff. I talked in a recent Rectives episode about this. It's going to come out soon. What are they going to sprinkle it on? What will actually ship this year? I don't know, but there's going to be AI sauce and it's going to be sprinkled. And that is, I don't think that's to Marco's question, what's the next big thing? I don't think that's it, because kind of like self-driving cars at this point, I would say that the large language model AI stuff has proved its utility, kind of like, smart lane holding, better cruise control things have proved their utility in cars. But I also think that we're pretty close to, I think the jury's still out, but I would put money on the fact that the current approach to LLMs, you can't just do more of that faster and get to HAL 9000. Maybe it's a piece of the puzzle. Maybe it's totally off in the wrong direction. But I don't think the next big thing equivalent to the car project is Apple should make a computer that thinks, because nobody knows how to do that. And I don't think the current approaches are going to get us there. But all that LLM stuff has proven utility. You can do useful things with it if you use it the right way. And Apple needs to use that to make its stuff better in all the ways that everyone else is making their stuff better. Make Siri better, make image search better, make, like, we know, like, there's no question it does that. Forget about HAL 9000. You can use this technology, Apple, to make your current products better. And that is not the car project, the headset, or whatever. But I think getting a bunch of people put into that part of the organization is a good thing. So, like, rather than, you know, the car project and the headset are both kind of like pie in the sky. We have a great idea. We think this is the future. We're going to try to do it. One of them they shipped, one of them they didn't, but they're big pie in the sky things. This is not pie in the sky. This is keeping up with the Joneses. This is, hey, have you noticed what everyone else is doing? Apple, you should do that too, because you got a lot of stuff that could benefit from things that other people are proving the utility of. So that, I think, is going to happen. Some of it this year, hopefully more of it next year. And if that's all that came out of this, like that Apple never came up with the next new big thing, I think it'll be fine. Partially because I think, you know, oh, we got the headset, but we're still waiting for the glasses, right? Like, you can extrapolate from Vision Pro and say, where is this going to go? And unlike self-driving and HAL 9000, you can see a fairly straightforward path of, like, just keep iterating on the Vision Pro with increases in technology that we expect to happen. And, you know, screens get better, CPUs get better. Like, just, we can see that progressing. We don't quite know how to get all the way to glasses because some of the display stuff is questionable at this point. But even if it's just Vision Pro, but better than the current Vision Pro, there is a path to travel there. And I think that is a big enough project, a brand new platform that is very much more ambitious or different than competing platforms than the other things that it's done. There's 10 years of runway right there anyway. So I don't think Apple should be out there saying, we need to start something new. And that's setting aside all the health stuff that we know they're already doing. I don't think it should be like hovercrafts, like, or we're going to start an airline, or, you know, like, just chill out. Can we just do the Vision Pro for 10 years and see if that works out? Because there is a runway there. You have so many other platforms that you're working on. You're still trying to do all the health stuff. You got all the services. You got all the antitrust things. You got the App Store. Like, I don't think Apple should be looking to, you know, have a rebound project after Project Titan.
Hey, me again. We are still sponsored exclusively by ATP members. Please consider joining and becoming a member today. You will get a version of the show that does not have these membership ads stuck in the middle of it. You will also get the bootleg feed with the unedited live stream, as mentioned earlier. And you get the bonus episodes also, as mentioned earlier, that are exclusive member content for us doing all sorts of tech stuff, non-tech stuff, you know, even some feeling stuff here and there. It's a lot of fun. We also have a couple of those small bonus things as well. So, for instance, when we do our, like, time-limited big sales of new t-shirts and stuff in the ATP store, you get 15% off that. If you can support us, this is by far the best way to support the show. So we would really appreciate it if you consider it. atp.fm/join, and it's $8 a month, or $88 a year, or a couple other different currency options here and there. Again, we support gift memberships now, thanks to John's hard work on that. I didn't do any of it, so John gets full credit for the gift membership system, but it's really cool. You can do that as well. So check it out today, atp.fm/join. Once again, ad-free version, unedited raw bootleg feed, bonus episodes, the discount during our sales. So $8 a month, atp.fm/join. It is the best way to support the show. Thank you so much for your consideration, and let's go back to the show.
Joe writes, what email clients do you all use these days? Curious to know how each of you handle this on both iOS and macOS, and what you feel are the best clients. I feel like this is one of those, as John often describes, annual or sometimes semi-annual questions that people always want to know what email clients we use. And I don't know that it's changed, like properly changed for any of us since we started recording the show in 2013, 2014.
We're creatures of habit.
Yeah, but for me, it's Mail App. I was briefly using whatever that one is. Is it Mailplane that everyone loves? Something that everyone loves for Gmail. And I was using that for a while. And then when I switched to Fastmail, I put that aside and went crawling back to Mail.app. And that's what I use everywhere. And I thought that was the same for Marco, isn't it?
I have actually really never gone for many other mail clients.
Sorry, I just meant that you're all in on mail.app.
Yeah. I'm all in on mail.app, and I am mostly fine with it. I wouldn't say I love it, but I don't love email. And so I treat email as a very kind of functional thing that I have to deal with somewhat reluctantly, and I deal with it as little as possible. Apple's mail apps let me do that on their platforms with lots of various nice little integrations. I appreciate all of that first partiness of them. My problems with email have nothing to do with the client. Like, none of the email apps that are out there would do a meaningfully better job at making me hate email less. I just kind of deal with it the way I do. The only thing that I literally just ran into this earlier today. My one big feature request for Apple's mail apps, having used them now for how many years? When the iPhone first shipped and the iPhone had its version of mail.app on it, it mostly worked. It mostly satisfied my needs, except for one giant area: search. Mail search on iOS has always been really rudimentary and really crappy. And many times I end up having to go search on my Mac mail app instead, and it will find things the iOS app will not find, including this literally just happened today. I assume the reason why is because Mail on the Mac downloads everything off the IMAP server and indexes everything locally, whereas Mail on the iPhone appears not to do that. I think Mail on the iPhone has always done server-side IMAP search, not local search. I assume that's why I'm getting different search results. But that trade-off made sense in 2007. That trade-off does not make sense in 2024. I understand that people's email boxes can be really big, so maybe make it an option. Give me a switch in the settings app that says download all mail, and let me search all mail in the iOS mail app with the exact same search characteristics and results that I would get if I did it on my Mac. It's 2024. I'm pretty sure Apple can make that happen.
John, you still using the Gmail web client?
Yeah, the main sort of performance characteristics that I'm looking for in an email client date all the way back to the early days. My very first email clients on the Mac, I was super heavy into Entourage, and later when that morphed, or Claris Emailer, which morphed into Entourage. And what I loved on those things is they had like rules that you could apply to mail that would ferry your mail into various folders or whatever. But it was so frustrating when I'd have all those rules set up on my home computer, and then I'd like try to check my home email while I was at work. And so I would like install the same email client on my work computer, but then the rules would be on my home computer. And this was before the days of ubiquitous cloud sync, and it was never quite the same. And a lot of times I was using POP. So if you popped it from one location, if you popped it from a second location, the second location wouldn't have it because it didn't pop it. So now you have the same message appearing in two different places. They had to be routed the same.
We should probably explain that just a little bit more, because everything you said was accurate, but it sounds bananas to people of today. So most email clients, or most email servers, from, 15, 20, 25 years ago, the way it worked was you used Post Office Protocol, or POP. And generally speaking, granted, you could tweak this, but generally speaking, what would happen is your email client would go to the server. It would say, okay, what are the new messages? It would grab the new messages, and then it would delete them off the server. So like John was saying, let's say you have a machine at home that is checking your email. Generally speaking, the machine at home would check your email, delete the email, and then it would be living or alive. Oh, those emails would only be living on that one computer. If you went to any other computer, because you wouldn't go to a cell phone at this point. If you went to any other computer and went to get mail, well, tough noogies, it ain't there because it was deleted off the server. And this was normal.
But I was smart enough not to do that. But that introduces a second problem, which is if you say, okay, don't do that, leave it on the server. Now, my home computer would run a little, using POP, it would check for mail, it would see there's a new message, it would download it, right? Now, my work computer would run 2 seconds later, and it would see that same new message, and it would download it, which is why both computers needed to have the same set of rules, because as far as they're concerned, it's like the home computer downloads the message and files it away. The work computer downloads that same message. Now, these two computers are downloading the same message, pulling it from the server. They better route it to the same place. Otherwise, home and work will slowly get out of sync. Like, they're not even connected at all, but it's like a one-way process. But if they don't have the same rules, as things flow in, they won't go in the same boxes. And by the way, if I respond to something at work or mark it read at work, home has no idea that happened, because their only function is using the POP protocol to see if there's new messages and downloading them. There's no reverse direction where when I mark something as read at work, it sends a message up to the POP server so that when I go home, no, that doesn't happen. It's one way, right? So trying to deal with that, just home and work, being able to check my personal email at work, which is, as all working people know, is an essential part of your sanity, is being able to do that was made very difficult. And I do like rules, and I do like routing, and I do like everything to be the same everywhere, right? And IMAP, you say, well, IMAP solves this. Well, IMAP, especially in the early days, was a little bit of a nightmare. It was trying to solve this problem by having two-way communication and everything, but the clients for it weren't great, and there were lots of different IMAP servers, and depending on your ISP and where you email from, it was very confusing and annoying. But IMAP was an improvement, but still kind of janky. But anyway, I was using like Claris Emailer and Eudora, not Eudora. I know Eudora is great, but I wasn't ever a big fan. Entourage and Claris Emailer back in the day when they did support both POP and IMAP. But then Gmail came along. And Gmail said, forget about your stupid client. The server is the source of truth. I have all your email. Your email only exists in one place. Folders, rules, those are all here on the server. Oh, you can look at what's on the server however you want. Say in a web browser. Try Chrome. It's nice. But don't be fooled. Gmail, Google has all your email and all your rules and all your settings and all your preferences. And when you mark something as read or unread or reply to it, or you send mail into a sent mail folder, that is all happening on Google servers. And what it did was gave me blessed freedom to say, wherever I check my email from, a phone, an iPad, an internet cyber cafe, anywhere I go, where I don't care whose computer it is, I don't care if it's at work, at home, on any computer that I have, when I load up gmail.com, my email looks exactly like it did the last time I left it. If I marked a thing as read, if I replied, oh, and by the way, search, Google's really good at that. I can search my email really easily. And it also, in the back in the day, lets you import all your old email. So this is a long-winded way to say Gmail. I use the Gmail for my email, and I use the Gmail web interface. I like the Gmail web interface. I miss, the days of Entourage and Claris Emailer, but I've moved on since then. I don't like Apple Mail. I don't like the interface on any platform. So I use the Gmail web interface. On my phone, I use the Google's Gmail app, which is not very good, but it doesn't really matter because all my mail is there. If I can do what I want in there. If I don't like it, I just put the phone down, pick up literally any other computer, log into Gmail, and there's all my mail. Big proponent of Gmail. It's been one of my favorite products over the years, and I'll be very sad when Google eventually cancels it.
I don't think they would cancel that, but I definitely take your point.
No, I think I'll be dead or retired by the time they do that. Too much valuable data goes through. I think they'll keep Gmail around.
Yep. Warren BK writes, you recently mentioned Marco's love of the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard, which I've always liked. Why hasn't Marco constructed a do-it-yourself mechanical keyboard in the ergonomic key layout he prefers, with the switches he wants, etc.? This seems like exactly the kind of project he would love, and he'd end up with a keyboard customized to his personal specifications. I get this, and obviously my name is not Marco, but at least for me, I actually like Apple keyboards, and in your case, you like the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard. And I don't know, as I get older and more crotchety, I feel like there's less space in my life for fiddly things. And I'm assuming that's probably where you are too.
I'm glad that whole world of keyboards exists. If I ever want to dive into it, I will have no hesitation of diving into it. But right now, every few years when my Sculpt flakes out, I can spend $60 and have that problem just disappear. And the reality is, I like the Sculpt ergonomic keyboard. There's not a lot about it that I would change. It solves my needs very, very well and for very low effort. And if I were to customize something with the world of custom keyboard enthusiast kind of stuff, I think what I would end up creating would actually be worse for my own preferences. So for instance, even though I know there's different key switches with different volume levels, all of them are way too loud for me. I've tried them all. Yes, even the Cherry MX Brown or whatever. Every few years there's a new one, and people say, "Oh, this one's quieter" or whatever, and I try it and it's loud. So that is problem number one. Is that I don't really like the giant mechanical key switch sound. I also don't have any problem with the feedback of the relatively standard scissor mechanism of the Sculpt ergonomics keys. That's not a problem I'm looking to solve. I understand why people like those things. it's just not that important to me, and I don't like the noise trade-off. Secondly, the Sculpt is actually a very compact keyboard for an ergonomic keyboard. And if I would actually create an ergonomic layout that has kind of the two key elements of what makes it help, which is the split gap and then the kind of curved and reverse tented shape of it, to actually create that with mechanical keycaps with that kind of keyboard would be probably a larger overall finished product. And to create that, it's solving problems I don't have to make a result that would be worse for my preferences. That's why I don't do it. Things might change over time. My preferences might change, or the availability of Sculpt ergonomic keyboards, as we've discussed, it's kind of in flux right now. So that could be getting better with like the Matthias recreation, or the was it Incase who took over that business?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So their recreations could be fine or could be ruined. The Matthias recreation could be fine or could be ruined. I don't know yet. I've pre-ordered both, and we'll see what happens. And I still have a few Sculpts left from my stock, my personal stock. So we'll see. But right now, this is a problem that I don't really need to be solved. Every time I use the Sculpt, I'm not thinking like, God, I hate this thing. I can't wait until there's a replacement. No, I actually like it. I prefer it. And whenever they die, I just pop a new one out of the closet and move on with my life.
Anonymous writes, as tech enthusiasts, how interested are you in LLMs and generative AI? Is it something that you follow from the sidelines, or do you actually dive into these topics and do some of your own research? And follow-up question, for which use cases have you been using chatbots like ChatGPT, if at all, and what were your experiences? For me, I'm interested. Certainly, this is the new hot thing, and unlike crypto, it doesn't make me want to vomit all over myself, so that's an improvement. I am trying to keep up with it and get at least a nominal understanding of how it works, in a very broad and basic understanding of how it works. In terms of how I use it, I don't typically do anything with generative, like making images or anything like that. I've tried a couple of times. Like I think when I was first trying to come up with a placeholder icon for call sheet, then called Flookup, I was trying to come up with an icon that was at least passable, not to ship with, but just to ship like a beta with. And I couldn't even get something that looked even remotely like what I wanted at the time. And that very well could have been user error on my part. But nevertheless, I do use ChatGPT every once in a while, typically to solve some sort of programming problem with something that I'm not familiar with. Or a great example of this, a wonderful use of ChatGPT, is how do I do this particular FFmpeg incantation? Because I know a lot of the things that I do regularly, and I like to think as people go, I know a fair bit about FFmpeg, but there's a ton of things that it does, an almost infinite amount of things that it does that I don't know how to do. And I do have a folder in Apple Notes. Speaking of Apple Notes, John, I have a folder in Apple Notes with, individual notes of like different recipes, if you will, for FFmpeg. But there's certainly times that I'm like, well, how the heck do you do that? And ChatGPT oftentimes will either get it right or get me close enough that I can get it right quickly. And that's actually applicable to a lot of programming problems. So that's how I've been using it. I feel like I picked on Marco first a lot recently. So John, what are you doing with this?
I am interested in these things. I'm interested in understanding how they work. I've tried to learn as much about them as I could without actually having any reason to make anything like this. It's difficult to follow sometimes. It's not my area of expertise, but I think I have somewhat of a handle on what their approach is. But the most important thing, like the distinction between crypto, is that these things, these large language models and generative AI, have practical utility. You can use them to do useful things. It's very obvious to everybody. That's why people are excited about this. Again, unlike crypto, where it's like the useful thing is make a bunch of people a lot of money, okay, but like, does this help me with my work? No, not really. I use these things kind of as a augmentation to Google search, right? So anything that I'm doing where I would be using Google, I will throw in these various large language model things into the competition, just like I put all my little voice cylinders in the house against each other, and I ask them all the same question to see how they do. I'm trying to see who's going to be the most useful. So sometimes, when I'm programming is a great example. When I'm programming, very often you Google for things, right? Oh, I don't remember what that is. How do you do this? What is the order of arguments to this function? I can't remember, right? You can use Google for that, and you find a Stack Overflow question, or you find the reference documentation, or, if you're in Xcode, you can go directly to it with just a right click or whatever. But yeah, I'll throw in ChatGPT, Google's Bard thing, the Bing thing, to see how they do. Because sometimes, even though I know the answer is in the reference documentation, sometimes reading the reference documentation, like if you're trying to look like the select system call in Perl and you want to know what are the constants that you use in the bit masks, and is it the write bits then the read bits, or the read bits then the write bits? And you could look this up in the reference docs. It's going to tell you the order of the things. You're going to be able to find the constants, then you can look them up, and just like I know exactly where the answer is, and you could Google for it, and it will probably point you to the reference docs that you can read to get that answer. One of the utilities that things like ChatGPT provides is you could just ask them for the call that you want to make, and it will essentially not do that work for you, but summarize that. It'll say, okay, use this bit mask for the first argument, use this bit mask for the second argument based on what you asked me. So it already has found the what order the arguments are in, and it found the correct bit mask things to order together and the right things, and it gives me the result faster than if I had done that work myself. One of the things I don't use any of these large language model things for is anything based on facts, because unlike the like the line of code where I can just run it and find out if it does the thing that I want it to do, I can step through it in the debugger. I can see, yes, it's working. No, it's not working. Right? I can tell whether it compiles or is it made up a function or whatever. Using it for facts, I don't find useful. What year did this movie come out? It'll give me an answer, and the answer will be plausible. But the problem is, if I knew what the answer was already, I wouldn't have asked. And so now I'm faced with the answer that says, this movie came out in this year. Is that right? Maybe. Looks like it could be right. But now I have to go check somewhere to see if it actually is right. And if I'm going to go check somewhere anyway, I might as well just start in Google and end up at the Wikipedia page or the IMDb page or whatever. Now, is Wikipedia right? Is IMDb right? I don't know, but at least I have a foundation for setting a level of trust. How much do I trust Wikipedia? How much do I trust IMDb when it comes to the release date of movies, right? How much do I trust, this result from the New York Times or The Verge or whatever? With large language models, when it just gives me the answer for fact-based things, it's useless to me, because I can just stare at that and go, that might be the answer, but I don't know where that answer came from. And if it's right or if it's wrong, like there's no, the LLMs don't know, don't care. Like that's not their job. They're just smushing together a bunch of stuff and spitting out something that is plausibly an answer to the question asked. And so that makes them entirely useless for me in that area. And I would say also dangerous, because you might think you're getting the answer. And even like when Google does the generative results at the top of its search results, I tend to ignore those too for the same reason. Kind of for the same reason I've been ignoring the thing that Google's been doing for many years before generative AI, which is like, don't worry about the search results. We've extracted the answer for you. I'm like, yeah, but like, I kind of need to see where you got that answer from. So I just ignore it and I go to the plain old search results. And then I have to make the judgment myself. Like, do I trust this SEO spam page that's in the first 10 results are all like that? Or do I want to actually go to something more authoritative? Or if I go to the Wikipedia page, is this page constantly being in edit wars and the talk page shows there's much controversy about this? Or does everyone agree that this movie came out on this date, right? So I do use it. I think there is a bright future of utility for things like this. And the image generator is the same type of thing, because it's setting aside the legal and ethical implications there. People do agree that being able to type in a description of an image and get an image back is a useful thing to do if we can get the rest of the stuff worked out. So yeah, I'm definitely incorporating it into my normal workflows, and I have found things kind of like Steve Jobs said about the iPad. Like there should be something where the iPad is the best device to use it. There are things that I do when programming, for example, where ChatGPT is better than Google for getting me what I need faster. There are also things where Google is still better. There are things where right-clicking and looking it up in the reference docs is faster. But very quickly, things like ChatGPT have become a sibling to direct lookups and reference documentation, blind Google searches, and now right alongside there, ask a large language model.
Marco.
So personally, I have used generative AI relatively little. I did make that icon for my Fire Island driving app. I made that with generative AI because that's an app that had zero budget, and any time spent on it was time I shouldn't have been spending on it, really. And so I needed something quick and dirty that would be seen by about 70 people, and it was perfect for that. I don't really have a lot of need to generate a bunch of BS on a regular basis, so I tend not to use it that much, but it's a tool that I'm glad it's there when I need it. I'm more looking forward to, and some of this is already out there, tools that use generative AI functionality and techniques in ways that I actually do use on a more regular basis. So for instance, like if I'm editing a photo of myself and I want to, remove like the pimple on my forehead, we've had various techniques to do that in image editors for a long time now. But if you involve generative AI in that kind of feature, you can usually do a better job of it. Or other things, other kind of image manipulation, things like you have a low-res image and you want to make a high-res version of it, and you want to do whatever you can to extrapolate whatever the details might have been in a higher-res version of that image. Great. That's a great use of a lot of these generative AI type techniques to do things like that. So these features by themselves in like the current standalone products that we see them in, they have utility to a lot of people, no question, but I don't see a lot of that myself. But I'm looking forward to, and already still currently benefiting from some of the implementations of those techniques into tools that I use. So again, other instances, like, if Apple ever realized that there's 5 of us out there who use Logic to edit podcasts, they can probably add a whole bunch of really interesting, useful features to Logic to make editing podcasts better, some of which would be AI-based. And then another example of that is like the world of audio transcription algorithms has been radically improved by the OpenAI Whisper model. It doesn't get as much attention as the other OpenAI stuff, but Whisper has been a massive transformation, no pun intended, in audio transcription. I'm looking forward to advances like that, that being integrated into more things. Like one of the big hopes I have for whatever Apple's AI sauce sprinkling process looks like this summer is Apple has a built-in API to transcribe audio. It's not that good. I'm hoping that this year it gets substantially better because maybe they're using some AI type models to improve their transcription. They've already been going in that direction in small steps here and there. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to is, there's going to be fun new problems that arise that we didn't even think about that they can all of a sudden solve, and it revolutionizes everything, etc. But most of what we do in our computing lives is boring tasks that we've done for a long time. Things like, as mentioned before, answering emails, doing various media manipulation tasks and stuff like that. There's lots of opportunities in tons of computing for those features and those tools to get better within the capabilities of what we already know AI can do. Like, we don't need it to get so much better that it can answer all of John's questions with factual accuracy. That'll be nice if it goes in that direction. It should. But even with what we know it can do today, there's tons of possible applications for the existing AI techniques, even the existing models that have already been built, in ways that we haven't seen yet, either because they kind of can't get built without somebody okaying it, like in the case of Apple being a gatekeeper over their platforms. Like, for instance, I would love the option to have ChatGPT respond to my Siri questions whenever they're about knowledge. Because even though it is a BS generator, it tends to generate more accurate answers than Siri does the vast majority of the time for informational questions.
Well, I wouldn't say it's more accurate. You're more likely to get an answer, and Siri will just be like, sorry, can't help you, or go look on the web. But honestly, that's the writer answer. I don't want something just giving me plausible BS when I ask a question. If you can't answer it, don't answer it.
Well, just ask a man.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I do not want plausible BS. When I ask him when a movie was released, Alexa should tell me the real answer, not the plausible BS answer.
Anyway, so I'm looking forward to just the integration of these awesome new AI techniques and models into the rest of our boring computing lives, making them a lot better. That's where I see the most promise. And yeah, we'll have some cool products along the way that are more exciting than that. But in the grand scheme of like how is this going to impact most people, I think it's going to be more like the former, more just making our everyday tasks better and making the tools that do them better.
And to be clear, Apple has been doing that for years and years. Back before the AI buzzword, they used ML, right? So Apple, the magic thing where you can, I don't even know if this would even qualify for quote unquote AI today, but like subject detection where you can drag the picture of your dog out of the photo. Apple's photo search where you can search for like, tin can or whatever, and it has this set of like that was ML and not AI, but that's exactly the type of stuff we're talking about. And what we're saying is, hey, state of the art has moved on, and you could make all those things better. I really, because in photo search, if you ever try this in Apple Photos, you can search for things like dog or cat or bed or spoon or car or parking lot, right? But if you try clipboard, you might see that, oh, the autocomplete isn't bringing up clipboard. Well, can't I just type clipboard? And the answer is no. Apple has decided there's a fixed number of things where you can search for. Well, technology has marched on, and you can do text-based photo search a little bit better than Apple's doing it with quote-unquote AI technologies instead of the quote-unquote ML that they used for that before. Just make your existing features better. Marco, the transcription is a perfect example. They're already doing that with quote-unquote ML. Just do it with AI, and it will, but we're just saying, like, keep up with the Joneses. People are doing cool stuff, and Apple is being left behind. And by the way, I saw someone toot this today. This is a website, it's fastsdxl.ai. It's a demo of another way these things could be interesting. It's just you type words and it makes an image. It's like an image generator, like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, or like, there's all sorts of things that can generate images for you. But there's this subgenre of them that says we're not as interested in generating every image really perfectly or whatever. Our thing is speed. This thing tries to generate images for you as fast as you can type. So you just start typing, and it's generating images, and you add another word, and it generates. And you might think, oh, that's a fun party trick, but I'd rather let you, can I just type a whole sentence and then you generate a really, really awesome image? I don't need you to do it to me fast. But having the thing react to you in real time with like a smaller, faster model does change how the interactions feel. And this is just another example of like, when I think about Apple doing stuff on device, or, what's the advantage of doing it locally, especially if your model needs to be smaller. Sometimes you want that trade-off. Sometimes doing it quickly, locally, not as well, is better than doing it in the cloud, expensively, requiring a network round trip or whatever. It just depends on the thing that you're trying to do. So I'm very optimistic that Apple can find many, many places in its existing products where it can use these technologies, which everybody knows Apple has been working on, to make all of its products better in, I guess, what Marco would describe as boring ways. But honestly, it's not boring to me if my photo search starts working better.
Thanks to our members who supported us this entire episode this week. You can join us and become a member at atp.fm/join. We will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MarcoArment, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
I'm looking forward to WWDC this year. Like all these rumors coming out about, maybe a slight updated design, but also like tons of AI stuff. I am looking forward to this.
Yeah, but what I talked about on the Rectives episode was like, what stuff will they have ready for this year, right? Because they're, I'm sure tons of stuff that they're doing, some of it's going to come out next year, some of it's going to come out the year after that. What can they get done in this year? And the big question for me is this the year where they do the apology Siri, essentially, and say, Siri, it doesn't suck now? Because that seems like the hardest one. Like Siri is the hardest one. Making, transcribing audio better, I think they can ship that this year, right? Making image search better, they could probably ship this year. But the Siri one is the big one. And like, honestly, it's kind of a distraction, but marketing-wise and PR-wise, like, because I would be perfectly happy if it's like, this isn't the year we make Siri better. Siri still sucks. But everything else is a little bit better. Autocomplete, we already changed that to a transformer model last year, but guess what? Now it's a little bit better. And searching your mail, it's a little bit better. Like, there's so many places where they can apply this to just make it a little bit better. It's not as exciting as saying Siri 2. Now it doesn't suck, but I would be perfectly happy with a WWDC this year where every single piece of every single OS has some of that AI sauce sprinkled on it and just gets a little bit better. Even if Siri still isn't any good, because I have faith that in a year or 2 or 3, Siri will get what it deserves, which is a complete replacement.
Last year was the year that we all were saying, well, all this new AI stuff is breaking on the scene, but it's a little too new for Apple to do much with it. They've had a while now. They've had, generative AI stuff and LLMs have been really like broken into the scene now for, about 2 years now or a year and a half? It's been enough time that Apple has had time to get caught off guard, realize they have to put a bunch of effort into this as everyone passes them by, start dumping money into it, and to start to see results. Like now, this is the summer that we're going to start seeing the first, probably bigger scale efforts from Apple in this front.
Yeah, like I said, they did do the LLM-based autocomplete in, what was it, iOS 16, 17?
17.
They're, like, despite the fact that they were caught off guard, they've already shipped some stuff that says, hey, we've found a way to use this tech to make something in our OS better. It was just so tiny, but this is going to be the big coming out, I think.
Exactly. And it's not going to be the last big coming out of this stuff. Like, we're going to see this over the following few years, I would expect. I do expect to see a whole bunch of those, like, as you mentioned, like just little stuff around the system. Features already existed maybe that are just now better. That's what I want to see. And honestly, as a developer, like, I guess I probably should have gotten into this with my answer. I guess we're doing this now in the after show. I've been hesitant to adopt much of this stuff in my apps so far for 2 big reasons. Number one is that I just don't have the time right now. I'm in the middle of this rewrite, laying the groundwork for it to be easier for me in the future to make bigger changes. But during this time of relaying groundwork, I can't make those bigger changes. I don't have the time. But in the future, I will, hopefully. But number 2, most of the AI features I could add right now would require me to do the work on the server. That is something that I could invest into, but I don't think it would be a great use of my time, and I think it would be very expensive for me. Even if I wasn't running like the most cutting edge models or the biggest models or whatever, it is a very high cost for a one-person operation, and it's probably not going to be worth it to me. And when I look at what I would want out of some kind of server-based AI stuff or any kind of AI-based stuff in my app, what I most likely want would be transcription and recommending systems, like the recommending algorithms. That would be the 2 major areas of value for Overcast. But those are actually, like, relative to what people expect out of my app, those are not massive percentages of the value, so to speak. I want to have transcription and I want to have, a more sophisticated recommendation algorithm. But if I never do those things, it's not the end of the world for my product. And so therefore, it is not worth investing a huge amount of time and money on the server end to try to make these 2 kind of ancillary features if it's going to be that expensive. Whereas, if Apple is building in a lot more stuff into the device side of things, I would expect much of that to be exposed through APIs. For instance, the speech transcription algorithm has been part of the public API now for a while. I think something like 6 or 7 years. If they improve the on-device transcription algorithms with AI stuff, I would expect I could probably use that locally on device. For all the same reasons that I don't want to run a whole bunch of AI stuff on my servers, Apple doesn't either on their servers, because the scale they would be dealing with every iPhone owner having access to feature XYZ, That is a massive scale to deploy in Apple's data centers and massive costs to pay. I don't even know if there are enough GPUs in the world to handle that kind of load.
Well, they're already doing a small subset of this with podcast transcription on the server side, right?
But that's not in response to customers' requests for service. They just transcribe all their own podcasts once, and then every customer gets the benefit, as opposed to essentially letting users say, "Take this image and make a description of it for me," or something.
Yeah, you don't have to transcribe everyone's videos they've ever recorded on all of their iPhones forever. Like that's server side at least. And so, what Apple has this massive asset of all of these iPhones out there in the world that are pretty capable hardware devices that they don't have to pay server time to run. So Apple has a huge interest for multiple reasons in pushing as much of this as possible to the device side, because they have this fleet of computing capacity that's out there in the world that is just, the value there is immense. I also have a smaller version of that, a much smaller version of that with Overcast. Like, as I lean into AI-based features in the app, I would so much rather do things client-side than server-side. And right now, the client-side versions of these things either don't exist or require me to bring in custom models, like, for instance, the OpenAI Whisper models. And that is possible. There are a few apps that integrate Whisper in certain features, but it's a big thing. Like, Whisper is a huge model. It comes in different sizes, but even the small ones on the phone are pretty substantial and a pretty heavy lift computationally. But, if Apple got in there and optimized things with, their optimization techniques to run on their hardware with their models, they could do a much better job of it if they chose to, and I hope they do. So anyway, I'm hoping that as I finish my rewrite over, hopefully this year, hopefully that gives Apple enough time to deploy iOS 18 with some really nice features that I can use for my first feature update after the main rewrite release. And I would love to be able to do stuff like live transcription search if possible. There's so many things I could do if it was on device that I would probably never really have the prioritization and the budget and the time to do server side.